Hey everyone, this is Michael, aka Epsilon Minus on MTGO, and this is a deck tech for my round 1 opponent, NosferatuStuff. He is running an interesting Grixis control deck with Tezzeret the Seeker fetching up Time Vault and activating it as his finisher, along with the Tinker Colossus and Key Vault. I'm gonna start off with his mana base. He's actually running an extremely interesting mana base that you don't see a lot in Classic. He's running 4 Polluted Deltas, 2 Scalding Tarns, and Bloodstained Mire is his fetches. And he's running 4 Underground Seas, 3 Volcanics, and a Badlands is his duels, which is not really notable in of itself, but he's running 3 Mishra's Workshops and a deck that has basically 1, 2 that are 0 casters. So basically, out of artifacts he's cast, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So basically 12 out of 60 cards in his deck that he can cast off of it, at least main deck. So it will be kind of interesting. I feel his mana base is a little shaky possibly, but it does add an element of explosiveness because if he has like Workshop with like Voltaic Key Time Vault in his hand, it's just the other eye of a Force of Will, it's game over. And then his other utility lands that he's running are 1 Library of Alexandria and 1 Tolarian Academy. And his mana artifacts, he's running a Mana Crypt, a Mox Opal, Mana Vault, and Soul Ring. He's got a couple main deck Graph Digger's Cages, which are probably going to be very useful against Oath and Dredge. Not quite as useful against my deck, but it will turn off my Green Sun Zenith, which is worth noting. And he's got the Time Vault combo with actually running 2 Voltaic Keys along with Time Vault. Kind of surprised he's not running a copy of Sensei's Divining Top. I always like that if you're going to run multiple keys. And for his 2 casting cost artifacts, he's got 4 Grim Monoliths for acceleration, which does somewhat mitigate the workshop problem because he can cast the Grim Monolith off his workshop to kind of basically convert artifact only mana into general purpose mana. And of course Time Vault, which is his main win condition. As far as his colored spells, he's got 4 Brainstorms, like most blue decks do. His Disruption package, he's got a couple Thought Seizes, he's got 2 Mental Missteps for counter magic, and he's running 3 Mana Drains, which I'll have to watch for. I don't want him draining me into a Tezzeret or Key Vaults or a Tinker Yawgmoth's Will or something like that. As well as the 4 Forces of Wills, which is also pretty standard for blue. The other colors are kind of more tertiary as black and red cards. So he's running the 2 black tutors, Vampiric and Demonic, as well as Yawgmoth's Will. And his red cards main deck are basically 2 red elemental blasts for the blue matchups and 2 ingot chewers for the shot matchups. And the ingot chewers are not going to be very relevant against me. I suppose he could possibly hard cast them as just 3/3 dudes, but I'm not running any main deck artifacts, and I probably would not bring in my cages against him. So those aren't going to be very useful for him. The red elemental blasts, however, will be pretty useful for him. He can use them as counter spells, and he can also use them to kill some of my creatures, which is notable because he does not have really any other form of main deck removal. And he's also running Tinker Colossus and 3 Tezzeret the Seekers, which he can use to untap his, Mana Vault or Grim Monolith. He can use to search up his Time Vault and untap it. Basically, if this guy hits the playing field, it's probably over unless I have a bunch of dudes out and I can swing. let's go to his sideboard here. He's running 4 Crypts, which are probably going to come in against Dredge. Probably not going to be terribly useful against us, although he could potentially maybe bring one in as a tutor target to possibly remove my graveyard to stop like Scavenging Ooze or Tarmogoyf or maybe Knight or something like that, since I do have some cards that use the graveyard. He's got an extra Thoughtseize and 2 Red Blasts. I imagine the Red Blast will come in. The Thoughtseize might possibly come in depending on what he takes out. And then he's running 2 Ratchet Bombs, which are almost assuredly coming in, kind of his sweeper removal. Then 2 Echoing Truth, which I'm assuming is probably more targeted towards the Affinity matchup, along with the Hurgle's Recalls. Just bouncing, it'd probably be just generally useful to bounce like Genesis Chamber tokens that are overwhelming the board, and or even just bouncing like an Arcbound Ravager with a bunch of counters on it. And then he's got an extra Ingot Chewer, which he probably brings in against Workshop or other artifact decks, and probably will not come in against us. As far as my chances against this deck, I think fairly strong. His mana base is very explosive, but I think it can be exploited. He's not really running any basics, which also makes my path a lot better. And he doesn't really have any way, like if I land a Pride Mage, he doesn't really have any way to get rid of it. And he basically, if there's a Pride Mage on the board, he's got to go for Tinker Colossus as opposed to Time Vault, because I can just sack the Pride Mage to kill his Time Vault when he tutors it up. So that being said, it's a very interesting build. It looks like it has potential to be very explosive, and looking forward to facing it in the next match. Thanks for watching, guys.